In Rome, certain names never resurface by chance. When they resurface, they are always accompanied by decisions, gestures, or signals that reopen questions that have remained unanswered. This is what is happening in recent weeks, as some seemingly technical appointments have brought back to the center of ecclesial debate a symbol that many faithful remember as one of the most traumatic moments in the Church's recent history. The reference is to Pachamama, a name that does not belong to the vocabulary of the Catholic tradition, but which, starting in 2012, began to circulate insistently in Vatican contexts, to the point of becoming for some an emblem of dialogue, and for others a sign of profound rupture. To understand why that wound is reopening today, we need to go back in time. October 4th, 2012, the feast of St. Francis of Assisi was no ordinary date. On that day, as the path to the Pan-Amazon Synod was taking shape, a ceremony took place in the Vatican gardens that attracted the attention of observers, believers, and critics alike. The images showed a ritual with gestures, postures, and symbols, foreign to Catholic liturgy, at the center of which appeared a statue identified as Pachamama, a figure linked to indigenous Andean cosmologies. It wasn't just a cultural exhibition. The video footage documented acts of direct veneration, with participants kneeling before the statue, in a context that left no room for ambiguity about the nature of the gesture. For many, that was the moment when a boundary that had until then been considered impassable was crossed. The story didn't end in the Vatican gardens. In the following days, the same statue was brought inside St. Peter's Basilica, the symbolic heart of Christianity. There too, according to documents, rituals were performed that further fueled the scandal. The images went around the world and deeply divided the Catholic world between those who spoke of enculturation and those who saw a surrender to religious syncretism. The official reaction did little to heal the rift. When, a few days later, a Catholic faithful removed the statues and threw them into the Tiber, the Vatican authorities responded by publicly asking forgiveness from those who had felt offended. A gesture that, for many observers, marked a further symbolic step. Not a distancing from the event, but an implicit legitimation of its religious significance. Since then, the name Pachamama gradually disappeared from official public discourse, without there ever being a definitive doctrinal clarification. No formal explanation, no clear stance. Silence replaced discussion, leaving the issue hanging like an unfinished parenthesis. It is in this context that the recent appointments to the dicastery for interreligious dialogue take on a significance that goes beyond their administrative form. The Holy See's statement, released in a neutral tone and without comment, simply lists 19 new consultors, coming from diverse geographical and cultural backgrounds. But as often happens, it is not the official language that speaks loudest, but rather the profiles of the chosen people. Some of these consultants are known for their involvement in theological currents that have made enculturation, religious pluralism, and indigenous spiritualities a central focus of their reflection. In particular, figures linked to decolonial feminist communities in Latin America, who in the past have publicly expressed an explicit spiritual relationship with Pachamama, have attracted attention. In some statements reported over the years, Pachamama is not presented as a simple cultural symbol, but as a subject of religious affiliation. Expressions such as, "We do not belong to ourselves, we belong to Pachamama," were uttered unambiguously, using language that, in the Catholic context, recalls categories reserved exclusively for God. This is where the issue takes on a theological dimension that's difficult to ignore, because if praying with a symbol can be presented as a cultural gesture, declaring religious affiliation introduces a completely different level, one that directly questions doctrine without the need for explicit accusations. The dicastery for interreligious dialogue is, by its very nature, one of the most sensitive bodies of the Roman Curia. His task moves on a fine line, where the language, gestures, and categories used have a weight that goes far beyond pastoral intention. This is precisely why the choices made within it are observed with particular attention. Alongside the Pachamama theme, other elements emerge that contribute to outlining a broader picture. The emphasis on religious pluralism as a practical horizon, the tendency to present different spiritual paths as equivalent tools for achieving a presumed human fullness, the attenuation of doctrinal differences in the name of a dialogue that appears to pose no conditions. In this scenario, the distinction between dialogue and assimilation becomes increasingly difficult to draw. Relativism isn't openly discussed, but some practices seem to presuppose that every religious experience can lead autonomously to the same ultimate truth. An approach that for many contrasts with the traditional Christian message, even without ever formally denying it. The Pachamama affair, therefore, does not appear as an isolated episode, but as the most visible point in a longer process. A process that has its roots in the years following the Council, and which has spanned several pontificates, taking different forms but maintaining a recognizable direction. Even today, under the pontificate of Leo XIV, the question arises again in the form of a question. The recent appointments could be interpreted as simple administrative continuity, as the legacy of previous decisions, or as a sign of a shared approach. The lack of explicit clarification leaves room for both interpretations. The fact remains that every time Pachamama resurfaces, a question resurfaces that concerns not just a symbol or a statue, but the very identity of the Catholic faith. A question that isn't openly formulated in official documents, but which continues to linger among the faithful. Where does the line lie between acceptance and confusion, between dialogue and renunciation, between inculturation and the loss of a sense of the sacred? Ultimately, the Pachamama issue isn't just about the past. It's about the present, and above all, the future. Because when symbols become ambiguous, faith itself demands to be defended, not with polemics, but with clarity. A clarity that, at least for now, continues to be lacking. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.